The truth is we all come from the same source. And the truth is that coming from the same source, spirit, God, whatever name you want to give it, expresses itself uniquely in each and every individual. So of course it's going to express itself as an African American person, as a Hispanic person, as a Native American person, as a male, female, gay, lesbian, all of it, because it's infinite. There's only one, and we all come from it. And if we could just get back to that, we would begin to disappear, and the wars would begin to disappear, the suicides, the racism, all of it would begin to disappear, because we'd go back to our original true self, which is in here, which is love. That's what we're all attracted to anyway. So I think that's where we need to begin. Go back to the beginning, deep within yourself.
All right, real quick, would you just introduce yourself and tell us where we are right now?
Good morning, I'm Sam Levitt. I'm from Barrow. We're at Point Barrow, northernmost point of the United States of America. And the Arctic Ocean. Beaufort Sea on the right, Chukchi Sea on the left, and they make up the Arctic Ocean. Welcome to my home. Arigaha.
Thank you.
Computers. They're gonna track you down, dear person. Thank goodness for these computers. We know who you're doing this to us on this radio channel. You think you can hide? We find you.
So what do you think are the biggest challenges that youth face in this community?
I would just say lack of places to go hang out as youth. You know, a lot of like our program, we close at 6 p.m. and we're only open Monday through Friday. So if you're not much of a recreational person that likes to do sports and whatnot, there's really not much for the kids to do. We don't have bowling alleys, we don't have theaters, we don't have malls. So I would say the lack of extra evening activities to participate with.
Outside of school and ITTC, what other constructive activities are available to you?
There's Praga Week, which is a gym that's open to the community, and there's a library. And
so do you have any concerns about the youth?
Oh yeah, I feel bad when I see a kid get hurt or hurting somebody. I feel for them from my heart. Yeah, I feel for them. I hurt, but I just hope they learn from their experiences, whether good or bad, right or wrong, as long as they learn something from their experiences, whichever way it goes.
I never thought that going to Barrow would be so life-changing for me. The whole trip was all about going there initially to do workshops, and it became much bigger than that.
Whatever it is, there's something that you're good at, and whatever it is, you find that something and you hold on to that something, because you never know where it can take you. I mean, I look in your faces and all I see is potential. I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, oh my God, these kids can grow up to be anything. You can't hold things in. You got to talk about them. And if you can't talk about them, you find a positive way to express yourself.
You know, I've had bad experiences and I didn't reach out. I don't think that's just a common thing to do. I mean, you would hope that people would.
Right.
You know, like, yeah, in a perfect world, yeah, oh, you need help? You ask, okay, let me help you. But people, you know, they tend to, you know, hide what they're truly going through, you know.
They're in this bubble, and that's their whole world. But what they have to understand is that this too shall pass. If you just hold on one more day, one more month, one more year, it will pass, and then you will come into your own, and you will be able to achieve all your full potential. But you can't give up.
If you're, you know, 16 years old, 18 years old, you haven't been alive long enough to even understand that perspective.
You know,
right?
You know, everything feels like it's going to be forever when you're that age, and there's no way you can talk them out of that.
Because it's not really until you get older that you see how fast time really moves. You know, when you're younger, time moves extremely slow.
Yeah.
You know, so you, like you said, you do feel like you're just stuck in the moment forever. It's never gonna change or get better. You know, and then, you know, as you get older, yeah, you see, okay, this happened to me. I learned this lesson from that. But you know, when you're in it, you're just in it.
You know, when we get to a point in our adulthood, we kind of forget what it's like to be young.
Yes.
It is hard.
Yes.
Being young.
It's hard.
It is hard. And I think recognizing that and validating that with young people and letting them know that it gets better is, you know, and there is something beyond high school. There is something beyond, you know, this small community you're in right now, that it does get better and it will get better, and giving them that hope.
And yeah, and that's another thing. I'm tired of people being like, oh, this is going to pass, it's going to get better. You know, it's going to get worse. So
That's not true. It's not true that things are necessarily going to get better, and it's also not true that things are necessarily going to get worse.
That's true.
Neither should be a consideration. The point is, you figure out what your goals are and you work towards them. That's how you live, you know.
Dull knife. I need a sharper knife. But they'll work. Don't waste nothing, you know, the bone marrow. People like to eat the bone marrow, you know, they break it up. It's good for the body. Yeah.
I always think that we have such a big generation gap, because a long time ago, when I was growing up, when my brother turned 13, he was automatically put on a seine boat. And that was bonding time between my dad and my brother. And he still says that is the most important time he ever had in his life. And he just turned 50.
The whole thing is really to facilitate a community dialogue about like the history and heritage of Barrow, and about some of the problems that you think it might be facing and some of the solutions to addressing them. Just kind of to, you know, open up a dialogue and facilitate it with the kids and their families and stuff. So you haven't heard of it?
Not really. I've been so busy doing stuff with my children and my grandchildren.
Okay.
And I think those are the kind of things that we need to do for young people, is do a lot of things that our parents used to do with us, like do a lot of cultural things like hunting, fishing. I've got a 10-year-old grandson and a 7-year-old grandson, and all summer I've been taking them out hunting and getting them to learn the country. I'm teaching them that, and those are the things that our young people need to do. There's so many parents right now that are so busy with 8-to-5 jobs, or don't have the resources anymore because most of the time they're not working or just doing drugs and alcohol, and that creates what I call dysfunctional families, and they don't do anything, period, with their children. And those are the youths that are having a lot of problems. Is the ones that are not being taught what we were taught when we were younger by our parents and our grandparents.
So you're from Barrow?
Born and raised here.
Born and raised. Awesome.
Yeah.
So what do you remember? Can you tell us what Barrow was like when you were a kid?
Right now where we are at, it was all tundra. All of this was all tundra. This is where we used to go bird hunting. Barrow had about a population of about 900 people when I was growing up. There was no roads, no gravel roads. They built the roads in 1961. Growing up, we didn't care about cash. We didn't know anything about cash or money. You know, we were trying to survive.
Did you like that lifestyle?
It was great, simple, great, and it was the best. Yeah, and there was no rich and poor. Just everybody was equal, because everybody was. We eat the same food. We hunt. We share everything.
And you don't want to go back to that?
I would if I could, but I know I can't, so I have to move on. I don't think there's a way to turn back, so we got to keep on living.
It was a very good life. It's changed a lot from then to now. Today, I wish that it was like that before, because personally I spoil my children, and that's the greatest regret that I've ever done to my children. Because even though we were poor, we were never hungry, we never had, material things, and that was a big mistake for me as a parent, because I was giving them what I didn't receive, I guess, when I was a child, but that's just material stuff. Our parents taught us good values. Don't steal. Don't be prejudiced. Because I remember we had the first white child in our class, and we picked on him and made him cry. And our dad heard about it, and I distinctly remember, and I never ever forget that. He didn't like prejudice. He didn't like us being unkind to somebody else. And he said, we have 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. And so that's a way we should treat each other as human beings.
I grew up in Hoona, Alaska. It's like about 40 air miles outside of Juneau. And it's a small Tlingit community. We have like about 850 there now. I thought it was pretty simple. I often think about times back then, because for one thing, we were living off the land. There were 6 of us kids, and my mom was taking care of her brothers and sisters, and so there were 10 kids in the house. And during that time, we never were on food stamps. We always lived off the land.
I grew up in Chicago in a neighborhood called Uptown. And Uptown is truly a virtual melting pot. I lived in a building that we used to call the UN, because it had 19 floors and like 18 apartments on every floor. So there was people from every part of the world. I had friends growing up from all parts of the world. I mean, Ghana, Pakistan, Germany, Poland, you name it. We all got along really great.
Growing up in Tonga, they taught me family values and cultural, traditional values, including respect. Doesn't matter where you go, we have to respect everybody.
Okay, so in New Orleans, I was very, very young. And the people we hung out with, my family, the only people I knew, for the most part, were black people. That's what we were called back then. Black people, Negroes.
Can I call you black people now? Is that allowed?
Well, politically correct, it's African American, that kind of thing.
Some people take a very distinct offense to
That's
that.
true, that's true. I know who I am, so it doesn't bother me.
Doesn't matter to you, okay.
And so racism was prevalent back then, and in New Orleans. And that's kind of what I remember. So it was very small. I had to live in a small world to be protected.
Well, like I said earlier, my mom is from Barrow, and there's a lot of Native values there that aren't monetary. We have a culture that it revolves around sharing and learning and respecting not only yourself, but your community, your elders, and the animals that you hunt.
So I would say respect is a big one for, I think, both ways, always. Respect for human, respect for true human, and recognizing this in all. You know, I think that is something we really need to try to reconnect. And that would be something very internal and something very raw and bright and scary, because we're taught to cover up and mask up.
I believe that reasons for despair start here. They don't necessarily start with what's going on outside. You know, I was born and raised in New York. I grew up in the South Bronx, but I wasn't raised in the street in the South Bronx. I was raised pretty much in my apartment, you know, or the houses that we lived in. And I will tell you, I wasn't exposed to necessarily the things that you would expect. Not that it wasn't going on, but I wasn't out there. You know, that's not the element my mom allowed us to be in. So the kinds of things that brought me down, I made up. You know, either I made up or I made much of what was going on, and you know, in my little world. And I think a child anywhere, be he or she in beautiful Alaska or in the South Bronx, can decide for one reason or another that this is the most awful thing that's ever happened, and I can't get beyond this.
The thing that I've found about influencing the behavior of teenagers, whether you're trying to teach them how to act or encourage them to seek help for their problems, is you really have to avoid giving them advice at any time. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the second you start telling them something that they should do, they close off to you. And like, if you establish yourself as somebody who's going to listen and not try to like, you know, like really oppressively, I mean, it doesn't matter what your intentions are or how you're phrasing it, but anything that you say to them to try to suggest they behave a certain way, for the most part, they'll be closed off to. So the thing to do is just sort of be there, establish yourself as somebody who's present and listening and cares, and like, they will seek you out when they want advice, but you have to wait for them to do it on their terms, or you're just damaging your cause, you know?
Right, that's real.
When I was growing, I've lived here all my life, and what we grew up with were things that were simple. We didn't have the iPods, the Xboxes, the Red Bull, all these things that seem to be pop culture today. I mean, pop culture for me back then was getting in a boat and going hunting.
Too much computer, too much those funny games, the ones I can play, or I could play a day, just frustrate me, just because I don't know how to play them.
So how do you think too much computer and TV has affected them? How are they
Well,
different?
they're not concentrating on learning Iñupiat language, Iñupiat values, Iñupiat way of life, Iñupiat way of life. Iñupiat, we learn by listening and doing things, by actually doing it, and listening to our elders, listening to our elders, what they're saying, what they're talking about.
We're kind of losing our culture as like technology advances, because everybody just gets like zoned out on the media, and when some people need to be talked to, I think that's where most of the depression comes from, is the media.
A loss of talking to each other. I think with the new technology, with iPods and TV and everything, it just broke that communication. And being too busy, work, we have to work, we have to pay for our bills. Us as elders, we have to teach them and make them remember how we survived as Iñupiats.
I have a line that I always use. It says, the more we get connected, the more we're disconnected. You know, because, you know, the basic traditions have been lost. You know, just somebody walking down the street and the neighbor speaking to them, or, you know, getting out and shaking somebody's hand and, you know, introducing yourself. Like, it's really a lost, a lost form of living, which is sad. You know, I feel like things like families getting together and having dinner and breaking bread together, you know, that you don't see that as often as you did, because there is a television, there is a computer, there is a phone, there is, you know, all these different things that people are just locked into. Everyone's locked into their world, you know, so the art of community has been lost.
Yeah, I mean, I respectfully disagree. I mean, to a point, like, we do get totally sucked into our little devices. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. But at the same time, I think the art of community is not lost. I think it's evolving, and it's changing, and there are things that have value that are becoming less prominent as part of that process. But then I think there's new things that also have value that are becoming more prominent. Mm-hmm. For instance, this is just the first thing that bubbled up to the top of my head, but if you're a gay kid living in the Deep South, you have access to a community of supportive peers that you never would have had access to 40 years ago because of that technology. I don't think we need to look at it in terms of we're losing traditions. I think we need to look at it in terms as an ongoing evolution, and how do we sort of acknowledge that process and guide it in positive directions as opposed to destructive ones.
It's just a human connection, you know. I feel like that part of it
is definitely changing. I'm not convinced it's being diminished necessarily, but there can be no doubt that it's changing.
It's, you know, so many things happen in a moment's time, you know, so if you're taking that moment to text while you are creating a moment virtually, what moment are you losing physically? You know, so it's, you know, it's give and take.
You take away somebody's roots, their identity of who and what they were here for and meant to do and be, and they become lost, you know, and then you no longer can respect yourself to the greatness that you are supposed to be, I suppose. And when you don't find this in yourself, and you don't find it in your family, and you don't find it in your peers or your elders, then, you know, what does anything mean or matter anymore?
A couple of my friends here didn't make so good choices and committed suicide. And it wasn't just here in Barrow, it was also in the city. And I know a lot of people have committed suicide or gone into violence. I think it's affected me a lot. And also other people, like their relatives and their friends.
In one way, shape, or form, every family has been devastated, whether they abuse alcohol or drugs or not. Mm-hmm. There are individuals, young and old, that are committing suicide. And it stems from uncertainty, hopelessness.
It has happened in our family, yes. And it's an eye-opener that, you know, sometimes you feel like it can't happen to you as a family, but it did. It got us closer, and it made us realize that we need to get even more closer and start listening to our young people, support them.
I'm still a bit in shock about the one that happened not too long ago. And the reason I'm in shock about that is because the young man that shot his girlfriend and shot himself, I had just seen in court the day before. And I would not have known that that was going to happen. I just wouldn't have known.
Clearly, people are, before suicide, they're depressed, all right? Depression comes from stifling what is trying to be expressed through you. And so one, you have the belief that there is something outside of you doing something to you. Society is doing this to me. Society says, I'm not good enough. Society says, I'm not worthy. And so that whole belief system of separation creates the beginnings of depression and what have you. And then you, without the self-worth and the understanding about self, now you're lost, and now depression can really take its hold.
One of the most important things I think I came to realize in my research on suicide and why people do suicide is that it's not that they really want to commit suicide, they want the pain to stop. They want They want the pain to stop.
Yes.
And so they see this as a way to stop that pain. Not that they really want to kill themselves. They just want that pain to stop.
Yes. I think it stems from being severely depressed, and I also think it stems from not feeling or feeling that they just can't express themselves. I think it has a lot to do with not being able to really let out what it is you're feeling or have an outlet, and feeling that it's just, there's just no other way out.
I think if you find that one person that you could trust, you know, when my son was younger, he'd scratch his knee and I could kiss it, you know, and put a Superman Band-Aid on it, but whatever was bothering him that he couldn't share with me, I wish there was someone else that he would have been able to talk to, because he killed himself. December 14th, 1997, that was 2 days before my husband of 25 years died of cancer. Losing a husband and son so close together hurt. But the one thing that I had to turn around was to say that I need to do something different in my life. I gotta stop feeling sorry for myself, because there's people that have gone through worse things than I have, and to let them know that they're not alone, because people don't stay away from you because of the suicide, that stigma that's attached to suicide. They stay away from you because they don't know what to say. And I try to talk to the people who are their friends, that you don't need to know what to say. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to try to analyze what happened. As long as I know that they're an arm's length away, you know, I'll be all right.
I'll reset for everybody so they know what we're talking about. We had a friend of ours named Chandler who killed himself 4 or 5 years ago now. Chandler was a guy that I lived with. He was a roommate for a long time, and you know, we got really close when we were living together. Like, we had a lot of hours-long discussions about the nature of art and life in general. You know, and he was really a unique and special person. You know, like super intelligent, super creative, unfailingly positive, and really nice. And he disappeared one day. It just had such a profound impact on everybody who knew him, you know. And for me personally, the last time that I saw Chandler was a couple weeks before he disappeared, and we hung out. And he'd been dealing with some stuff in his life, you know. Like and I've heard since then, I've heard other stuff too. But like, I mean, he'd had some bad stuff happen, and we hung out. And I had my own problems that I was really focused on, and it was this really sort of strained evening. I mean, it wasn't super strained. Like, we were cool and we were hanging out and talking and whatever. I think he came over to my house. And I don't remember what we did, but like, I mean, I could tell there was a lot on his mind that he wasn't talking about, you know, and he definitely had this sort of panicky edge to him that I'd never seen before, you know. And at the end of the night, dropping him off, I remember thinking to myself, like, man, he seems like he's going through a rough time. Like, I need to make a point of hanging out with him again soon. And then, you know, that was the last time I saw him. And so then after it was revealed that he had committed suicide, you know, I just had this crushing guilt, you know. Like, I'd known that he was having a lot of trouble and really felt that I should hang out with him again, you know. And just kind of hadn't gotten around to it, you know, because that's just always how it goes. You just don't get around to reaching out and hanging out with people because you've got, you know, your own stuff. And I don't know. I mean, in retrospect, you usually don't think that people are going to commit suicide. I don't necessarily feel guilt about it anymore. There's some remorse that I didn't, you know, get off my ass and hang out with him. But it was a really rough time right after he killed himself. There's the grief of losing him, and then also the feeling that, you know, I kind of was in a position where maybe I could have helped, you know, if I'd just been a little bit more aware and a little more thoughtful. I mean, you know, and it's not something I beat myself up over. I stopped doing that years ago, but at the same time, I sort of have to acknowledge that fact that I was there and I saw it and I knew, you know, that something was wrong. And I just never got around to you know, doing anything. So, you know.
My thing is, if we can get in there and, you know, make a difference in one child's life or deter them from a life of crime or help them heal from some of the abuse they've been through, then I feel that that's reward for us, me especially. One of the underlying or most prevalent things that was a common thread everywhere we went were kids talking about suicide, either having tried or, you know, attempted or lost someone. And these were all very young kids. That is one of the reasons that we really came up with the Reasons to Live campaign, as opposed to doing a dark, taking a dark look at suicide. We try to turn that around and give you reasons to live. And I'm really happy about that campaign because those PSAs are still airing all over the state. Through community collaborations, we connected with Progressive Media Alaska, who has very like-minded concerns. We were able to develop some incredible multicultural PSAs about suicide prevention.
Life sometimes is harder than it seems. Still, young one, you must remember to dream.
Progressive Media Alaska has done magnificent PSAs for our organization. It made it possible for us to send those to Barrow, and it consequently got invited to go there. I never thought that going to Barrow would be so life-changing for me. The whole trip was all about going there initially to do workshops, and it became much bigger than that. Once I got inside and started dialoguing with the people, I found that they were very, very warm. They were warm, they were giving, they had so much spirit, and hospitality is probably one of the words that just really jump out to me. They were so gracious. Edith was a person that I could tell obviously was very well respected. She was looked up to, and initially when we met, she was a little shy. But as the weekend progressed, she shared so much in our workshops, and she shared so much about how important it was that we were there and what it meant to the kids and how they needed to know that there were creative and positive outlooks that would have a really good impact on their lives. And she insisted, we were on our way back to our living quarters, and she insisted that we go to the Native Heritage Center and experience the rehearsal with the barrel dancers, and it was a wonderful experience. We got a chance to actually dance with the Iñupiat people. Being in that environment and being around them and the drumming and the dancing and the movement, it was very, very powerful to me. You know, it's probably best described by me as a cold place where people have warm hearts.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
But what happens is people really do not feel that they matter to really, at heartfelt, soulful matter to anyone else. And so, and as a matter of fact, sometimes they feel like they're a hindrance to the people that they love, so they'd rather go away. And again, it stems from not understanding who you are, not recognizing that every person on the planet matters, and we're supposed to express what we actually are, which is the talents and the gifts that you came here with, that you've developed, and to give that to the world. We're supposed to be giving to the world, not always receiving, which is our society tends to believe that we're supposed to go get, and receive. That's not it. And so when you think that's what is, you get disconnected from who you really are and from everyone else. But when you realize you're here to give, now you're connected. So why would you take your life?
Nobody really seems to have just outright said, like, you know, yeah, life is suffering, you know, and it's not just now. You're going to suffer again, and
that is. I mean, I think
the longer you live, the more friends you lose. You know, the less your body will serve you. I mean, it really just gets worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do want to find a balance.
You know what I mean, right?
I think it gets better and it gets worse. I think it's both. You know, I mean, life is about balance.
Both things are true, but for me, I mean, the thing is, if they're suffering, is I mean, and it is part of, you know, like if a kid comes to you and says, oh, hey, man, I'm having a lot of trouble with this, I think the knee-jerk reaction that most adults have is to immediately start giving them advice. Mm-hmm. You know, it always comes back to that. And then another thing is that a lot of the time what's causing them stress is dumb stuff because they're teenagers. But, like, you got to remember that from their point of view, that is really, really important, and you got to respect that, you know? Right. And so just acknowledging, like, yeah, I hear you, I understand that really sucks that you're suffering. And then, you know, and so for me, it's about, like, just validating their experience, and that's really powerful for them to have an adult that they look up to, you know, just validate what they're going through and let them know that, you know, you appreciate the fact that they're suffering, you know? I mean, I don't know if I would start introducing the idea that their body's going to start falling apart in about 10 years, because they probably haven't thought of that yet, and there's no reason for them to think about that.
When I see that people are hurting or facing, you know, some kind of depression, or there's something that they're not able to verbalize, it's like you have to give them a way to speak about it.
But then there's those people that, you know, don't even know you, that are not even, you know, they're strangers. Mm-hmm. And they'll walk up to you and go, how's your day? Or, you know, are you doing okay? Or, you know, what's up? Anything that gives you that little sense of, I'm special, I'm unique, I'm noticed, notice me. Cares. Yeah, that's what brings me and motivates me to say the same thing to my friends, or to even a total, complete stranger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
That really, like, that one little, are you okay, whether you know me or not, like, that really does make a big difference. And, like, the other day I was having a bad day, and you called me, and I was just going off, and everybody was asking, like, what's wrong? Nothing, don't talk to me. Like, and then my aunt called, and I'm like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, so you going to work today? Like, you know, like, basically let me know, you know, I need to push forward and don't let that bother me, you know, do what you have to do. And, like, that really did help.
But most importantly, I believe that it's really about reaching your full potential. and being in a safe environment where that can happen. So that being said, does anybody, let me ask you guys, if you had to talk directly to another young person, maybe your age or in your age group, what would you say to them if they were feeling depressed or sad? Or
well, what I was trying to say is, like, what is causing you, like, to have this kind of breakdown? Like, why are you sad and stuff? And then they would, like, they would answer. Then I'll ask them a couple more questions, like, is there anything I could do to make you feel better, or anything I could, like, tell your parents or that you don't want to tell them? Is somebody at home? Well, because all my friends really trust me, because I don't, like, they tell me a secret, and I don't tell it unless it's very bad. Okay. I'll go tell the teacher, but anything else, I would support them on it, help them out the best way I can.
why is it so important for you to give back to our younger generation? Why is that essential for you?
A couple of different things come to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is the fact that I had people in my life when I was younger who I looked to as mentors, even if they didn't know it, you know. I don't know if they knew it, but whether it was like a theater, a director in some of my acting classes and things like that, or I know I went to a youth group for a while and there were some leaders there that I thought were really cool, or other volunteer stuff that when I was involved with when I was younger. I just really appreciate those people in my life.
When you help a child realize their purpose, it just changes life completely. I feel like the kids that you know, we're talking about, suicide and kids that just aren't well off. A lot of times they feel like, what am I here for? Like, I'm just, no one's gonna miss me. No, I'll be better off just not being here. And I think that's because they don't feel that they have a purpose for being here, when we all have a purpose for being here. So, and I feel like the artist, it brings that out. It just opens your mind, and it just gives you a different viewpoint of the world. So I always just really encourage, through the art, to find that, find that outlet.
Well, I think what's interesting is we've talked about youth needing to be heard and wanting a voice, and art is just another language.
It is.
Whether it's visual or dance or writing, it's a language, and it gives them an opportunity to speak and be heard.
And so what I found is through poetry and creative poetry and all that, in our world, we're so distracted by, we're so visual and distracted by all sorts of things. And poetry kind of brings this all together, and it's expressed in such a way that lots of people can catch it. And what I found is poetry can talk about the details of life and the overriding parts of society, and it's all done in this rhythm and rhyme, and it stirs the soul. And so I was really pleased to get into poetry and go, wow, this is an art form that can shift people and change people, because it's not in reading a book, listening to the news, and it's not gossip. It's just an art form coming forth that people can learn from, young people learn from. That was great.
When they come your way, you gotta be ready to receive. You gotta shake off the fear and believe, because at times we're tested to see how strong we really are, how far we really go. There's an army growing, but you can't join unless you know what you're fighting for. Because if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, so stand tall. Know that you can't walk until you crawl. You can't run until you walk. You can't fly without a running start. So pump your arms when you come off the blocks, and it won't do you no harm to come off your block. Get out and see the world, because everyone has their own mountaintop. It wasn't promised to a few, but promised to those who knew. So climb the way you breathe and never stop. Inhale your best, exhale the BS. Keep on keeping on. See where you're going and work on getting there. Don't hate on others when others get theirs, because you go get yours. You go knock down your own doors. Know that God go take care of you and yours. That's why miracles happen out of the blue. So know that, and remember that can't nobody stop you you but you, because dreams don't come true, they are true. So dream big, then after that dream even bigger.
The other thing that shed a lot of light for me was when they were singing By the Cross in the Iñupiat language. And it touched me because that was one of my father's favorite songs. And to be a million miles away from Alabama and to be in Alaska and have one of his songs, hymns that he played all his life, it really moved me. Because it made me understand that no matter where you go, people deep down are really the same.
I think with your group coming up here, it's excellent. Getting young people excited about there's different things that you can do as young people.
I think what you're doing is great. That's the first step. Yeah, that's what these youth I think needs is someone to talk with, someone to encourage them, someone to let them know that they're there.
It was inspiring to see that there are different types of medium, if you will, that are being used to explore an alternative of probably finding some talent that our young kids may have, whether it be song, poet, or anything that can, you know, bring their being out rather than what's on TV.
I like your program. I think you're doing a good job. I would hope that you would keep going out to the smaller places, not just Barrow, but hopefully maybe out to a village or two. I think it's really important to have every place involved.
You guys are doing a great job. Like, even though that you guys aren't from here, like, I feel a lot of warm feelings around you guys, that you guys are wanting to help us. And
awesome. All right.
It's very good. I think that's how we survived as Iñupiats. We danced and we laughed and we shared. You know, that was part of our culture. And anywhere, I think as human beings, we need that laughter and the dances and the music. And
do you have any advice for us? You know?
Just be yourself. Spread what you're spreading, and that's good. Get children, young people involved in feeling good about themselves and just have fun.
Thanks.
We're all basically formed and good. You know, we're all trying our best to make ourselves and each other better and the world around us a better place to live.
Every child, every person has something that they love to do, you know, whether they know it or not. You know, so I think it's just a matter of trying to find those things and use those different things as outlets, you know, to release the pressure, you know, before the valve bursts.
Hoping for the best, hoping to create something that you never even imagined possible, hoping it's a positive, hoping that it changes for your children and their children, you know, your great-grands, you know. I don't want them to be sitting and saying, you know, when I was young, I thought by the time that I grew up that this type of prejudice and separateness would be, you know, an ignorant thought by now. We are all connected, and we are blending, and this is something we can embrace in a very positive light.
It is when we do not speak about these things that people don't learn and don't understand. So I think what you're doing is great. And what I really love is that you're asking the people to talk to you. You're not going in there trying to lord something on them, but to get them to speak to you so that you can have an even bigger and greater understanding, and then putting it in a documentary form so that you can spread it to other places. So once again, you're helping for the cultures to then cross and getting understanding about each other. So we can, and what you'll find is, as you go throughout, it doesn't really matter what cultures, there's a similarity between them all. Why? Because we're still all one. And so we can learn from each other if someone's willing to listen, someone's willing to ask the questions. That's what you're doing.
One thing I want to see happen is that when you are doing things like this, that it be duly noted that something is being done about suicide prevention awareness. Because the people need to hear that something is happening. There is change in the wind, and we need to be part of that change. You know, that it's okay. You're not alone.